This video is brought to you by MoviePalette.com and enter ROOM15 for 15% off of your palette. Hey horror fans, I'm the Blood Guy. Welcome back to another review. And yes, this is not going to be a video about a film or documentary about a serial killer. It's going to be an actual film, something I actually haven't done in a while. Technically, this is still a new release. It came out last month in January. I think it's still playing. But this is something that we both saw last Sunday. I'm not sure why it's taken me so long to make a video of it. But it's a film that I've kept pondering and thinking about over the last week. And it's one I'd still say I liked, but I always felt that there was something to it. But it is one that I very much enjoyed, especially considering who the director is, who's a very well-known and well-liked director. I've never been a fan of him, but this is the new film by M. Night Shyamalan, and it's Knock at the Cabin, which came out early January last month. And this is the 15th film by Shyamalan. And right off the bat, I'll say I have never considered myself a fan of M. Night Shyamalan. I know a lot of people like him. Most of his films I couldn't get into. His first two I still haven't seen. Love The Sixth Sense, love Unbreakable. Those are the only two I could say I really, really like. Signs I always thought was overrated. In fact, I would say that's probably his most overrated film. Some will say Sixth Sense, but I think that deserves the praise that it gets. The Village, there's a lot I like about that. Ultimately, I found it kind of disappointing. And then I didn't see another one till probably The Visit. And, well, no, I did see The Happening. Of course, I hate that film. For all of The Visit's flaws, I still think it's a fun, crazy movie, as predictable as it is. Hated Split. I loved Split, but the ending was just so stupid that I hate it. It ruined the film for me, so I didn't see Glass. I didn't see Old. And now we're at Knock at the Cabin. And I will say this is probably, for me at least, his best film since Unbreakable. I've liked it more than every other film of his that I've seen since Unbreakable. Even Signs in The Village. I mean, when I think of M. Night Shyamalan, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Signs or The Village, those are still movies that I think of. And I would say Knock at the Cabin is his best since Unbreakable. So, of course, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, who co-wrote the screenplay with Steve Desmond and Michael Sherman, based on the novel Cabin at the End of the World by Paul G. Tremblay. Also produced by Shyamalan, Mark Beinstock, and Ashwin Rahan. There's two cinematographers, Jaron Blaschke and Lowell A. Mayer. I do know that one of them is Robert Eggers, a cinematographer. So you would think you would know what to do with this film because at least sorry, I'm stuttering. The setting, inside this one location, kind of like the lighthouse. The music was done by Herdis Stephens Dotier, if I pronounced that correctly, and it stars Dave, Dave Bautista. Wow, it's been a while since I made a video. Which, Dave Bautista, I've actually not seen him in the movie. I know he's a wrestler turned actor. I did not see Army of the Dead, mainly because I don't care for Zack Snyder. But I was impressed by his performance in this. I do think everyone in this movie did do a good job. I would say that the two standouts would be Dave Bautista and, is it Nikki Amuka Bird? Nope. Kristen Cui, who was the young girl in this, which normally I think young child actors range between very annoying and serviceable. And I thought she was one of the two standouts of the film. I thought she did fantastic. This was her uh, film debut, actually. But also stars Ben Aldridge, uh, Nikki Amuka Bird, Abby Quinn, of course, Rupert Grint, Ron Weasley, and the main reason why I wanted to see this, Jonathan Groff, who I know as Special Agent Holden Ford from Mindhunter, which I'm a huge fan of. And actually, I would say Jonathan Groff was one of the, not that he's disappointing, but he didn't really get a whole lot to do. He mostly just uh, sits there, tied tied up in a chair up until probably the end. Then he kind of gets to stretch his acting legs. So that I was a little disappointed by, that I didn't get to see much from Jonathan Groff. But I would also say that Ben Aldridge did a very good job as the other father. Because that's another thing. It centers around this gay couple with a adopted daughter. They're at some vacation at this cabin out in the woods somewhere in Pennsylvania. And then these four strangers, they knock at the cabin, and they have this crazy religious theory about, you have to sacrifice yourself, or else if you say no, we'll kill off ourselves. And by saying no, you will bring forth the end of the world, the apocalypse, which I'll get more into that. But one thing I will say, and I can guarantee, I can think of at least one YouTuber that I watch that's going to tear this movie apart for being woke. Now, I hate wokeness in movies as much as anybody, but this is not a woke film, mainly because the movie does not ride on them being a homosexual couple. It's not in your face. It's more just happens to be a gay couple. In fact, that's even mentioned in the film, how these four people didn't even know it was a same-sex couple until they showed up at the cabin. They knew there was going to be a family there, that this cabin was going to sort of be the area this had to take place. They didn't know it was a same-sex couple. Now, we do kind of get some flashbacks into sort of the earlier stages of their relationship for a little bit of character development, how they came to adopt this girl. And really, all it does is just show that the Ben Aldridge character is sort of quick to a temper, whereas Jonathan Groff's character is a bit more, probably a bit more vulnerable, probably a bit more open and, what's the word I want to say? Open and accessible, that's the word I'm trying to say, to all of these religious ideas about the apocalypse. He's a bit more open to those. That's really all the flashbacks give us, except for this one angle of how they might have a connection to one of these four people, that being Ron Weasley. That's all the flashbacks give us, so this movie is really not this big sort of woke propaganda film. And like I said, I can guarantee at least one YouTuber on top of my head is just going to be sitting me like, and it's woke because they're gay. That's what I think about that. It has to be in every movie. So, and really just tear the film apart for that reason. Again, I hate wokeness in movies. This is not that. It's more incidental than anything. But I really did enjoy this film. Sure, it has its flaws. It's a Shyamalan film. But, I really like the premise. I really like the very simple idea. I really love the setting. It's shot very well. Even though I will say it's kind of shot like a Hulu original. It kind of looks like a TV movie, or looks kind of like a Hulu film. But I really like the idea of this family vacationing at just this isolated cabin, which they even say how, there's no cell service, there's no neighbors, no traffic anywhere for miles. And then these four strangers show up, and pretty much their whole deal is one of you three needs to die or be sacrificed. We can't kill you. You can't kill yourself. You have to be involved in killing one of the other three. But each time you say no, we have to kill one of ours. And by doing so, a certain plague will be uh, released upon the world. Great premise. I really like that. Now, I haven't read the book, so I don't really know. I know certain things that happen in the book. I will say my major issue with this film would be the ending, which I'm gonna save for spoilers. This is gonna have spoilers, but uh, give a warning before that. It does not have that ambiguity that I think the book has. I think really would have had more of an impact. I do kind of think that this is almost tailor made for a modern audience because the movie starts right off with the young girl outside catching grasshoppers, and then Dave Bautista kind of walks up and starts talking to her about stuff, and then she runs inside, and that's when we get the knock at the cabin. Now, I'm sure a lot of modern audiences will like that because the movie kicks right in. I mean, just starts right up. I think that's kind of a detriment because of that we don't get to meet the family in the cabin. We don't get to meet the young girl. We don't get to really, well, we do, but we don't really get to know her or uh, Daddy Eric or a Daddy Andrew, played by Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge, respectively. We don't get to know them. We don't get to know them until there's the knock at the cabin. So therefore, the stakes don't really feel that high. We don't really have that investment with those characters, and I do think that kind of took a little bit of away from it because now we feel nothing for them, kind of. I do think if they had taken 10, 20 minutes to kind of see this family before everything happens, sort of see it, how they are together, kind of get invested into them, then the stakes would have been higher. And I think that would have helped it out more. But, of course, modern audiences, they just want the action to kick right in. Also, this movie does tend to very much explain everything. The first time, well, I only saw it once, but watching it, and then after it was finished, I thought, because I that's a criticism that I heard a lot of, was that it over explains things. And I kind of thought they didn't really explain a lot. I mean, yeah, the dialogue is very, like Dave Bautista will say, after one of them is killed, let's put a blanket over and take him outside and bury him. He's very descriptive in everything. Which, side note on Dave Bautista, I really like the juxtaposition of this big, imposing, larger-than-life, strong human, but with a very, meek, gentle, soft-spoken, mild-mannered personality. And his name is Leonard. I'm sure it is in the book as well. And I don't know if that's a reference to Mice and Men, but I really like that sort of juxtaposition of huge hulking person, but with a very sweet and gentle personality. Excuse me. Yeah, he tends to over-explain everything, but I think where the ambiguity would have really helped, other than the ending, and it does kind of explain because there is this angle throughout the film where Andrew, played by Ben Aldridge, starts to suspect that this group of people obviously are not, this sort of cult or anything, that they're just regular people who happen to be targeting them because of their connection with Ron Weasley, his character. And that it might be because there was some gay bashing involved in the past. And so it's kind of this, is the apocalypse really happening and they're like the four horsemen of the apocalypse? Or are they really being targeted as sort of a revenge plot through Ron Weasley's character? I would have liked that more, but of course that angle gets spelt out, and then even then it's just like, well, is the apocalypse really happening or are they crazy people? Of course, by the ending, it's really explained, and I I really could have done without that. Now, another complaint that I hear about is which one? This is an R-rated movie, mostly for language because every time someone is killed, it's off screen or it's done through stylization, and everyone's complaining that there's no blood. Well, this is not a slasher film. This is more of like a psychological film. And I think that by not seeing it and maybe hearing the sounds or having it stylized a certain way actually was more impactful. I think if they had made this, because they all have pretty gnarly weapons, these homemade, like like a pickaxe with stuff they're very garish, brutal weapons that they all have. And they put these white hoods down, they hit him in the head. I think if it had been this just brutal, bloody movie, I think that would have changed the tone a bit. So I think that by not showing it and making it more implied or stylized, I think that helped the consistency of the tone. But speaking of that, of course, there's the cameo by Shyamalan, which was so obvious that it really took me out of it. Now, Shyamalan could have had a cameo anywhere, especially with all this news footage. He could have been in there, but no, it's like this infomercial for uh, some sort of kitchenware. It really took me out of it. But I do think that this movie did pay a lot of attention to detail because you have Dave Bautista's character continuously talking about how they're agents of the apocalypse, but Andrew is continuously putting the pieces together on how this could just be a faulty group. There is no apocalypse, and they are this group that just targeted them specifically. And none of it's really far fetched. Everything that Andrew explains makes sense, at least plot wise, it does. So if they didn't explain it at the end, or explain any, or really have the scene at the diner, that's the most I'll say before spoilers. If they didn't have the scene at the diner and left it more ambiguous, all the pieces would have been there that you could have gone down of either avenue. So I really do like all the details that they give Andrew to say about how this is potentially a group that's just targeting them. Another thing that I thought helped, it helped, but there was this feeling of repetition because, of course, each time it's time for a sacrifice, one of the four will assume the position, they'll get killed, and then Dave Bautista will turn on the news and they'll show some plague. There's flooding, there's some extreme virus, and then, in his words, fire falling from the sky like glass, or the sky will fall like glass, and it's just all these airplanes just going faulty and just falling to the ground, exploding. See, like 700 commercial airlines or airplanes have fallen to the ground, killing a bunch of people. That kind of gets a little repetitive throughout the film. That, okay, sacrifice, no, it's one of us, turn on the news, that's not true because, and then the back and forth. But one thing character-wise that I thought really helped was each time one of them assumes the position to be killed, they kind of give them this one last chance to change your mind. And each one of them will kind of give them a little bit of a backstory on them. For example, like Ron Weasley says who he is, where he came from. This one woman, she kind of explains how she's this waitress with a young son. Don't make my son have to grow up without a mother. And I think that helped because it's trying to humanize them. At first, they just seem like these crazy, ready to kill each other cult members, strangers. but this helps humanize them. And I know the goal was to get the family to be like, wait, we shouldn't take their life. If they're telling the truth, you know, not only can we save them, but we can save mankind. Of course, it doesn't work. But I thought that was a nice touch. You know, yes, it's still repetitive, but I like the idea of them trying to give a little bit of backstory in order to try to make themselves more human to them. There's really not much to say before spoilers because that's pretty much the formula for the rest of the film. uh, really, up until the final bit, I really did the thing that was keeping me interested, other than really liking uh, the overall premise and the uh, very limited setting and cast of characters, was I did like the idea. I was hoping it was going to be more ambiguous about if this is an apocalyptic group or if it is, as Andrew says, where it is this group of people put together to go after them for, you know, whatever reason. You know, the whole thing dealing with Ron Weasley. I would still say that this is his best movie since Unbreakable. I did like it more than Signs. I did like it more than The Village. I do think that I do think that it was a detriment to stray away from the source material. I think if they stuck closer to the book, it definitely would have been a more interesting, definitely more impactful. Because from what I've heard that's in the book, there's a lot more impact, uh, more ambiguity, therefore making it more interesting. But yeah, they do kind of tend to over-explain things. It does get a little repetitive. There are some very uh, 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 kind of silly scenes, like when they finally overpower Dave Bautista, lock him in the bathroom, and of course there's the scene, they hear glass, so they go to look. The window shattered. They think Dave Bautista escaped, but he's hiding in the behind the shower curtain. But the window is like one of those small round windows, which how on earth could Dave Bautista fit through that window? But they start to think like maybe he really did. And of course he didn't. I did think that was kind of like a dumb character moment, but there was enough good writing and good attention to detail where as if the ending was different, there was plenty of breadcrumbs to go down. Maybe they were targeted on purpose, or maybe it really is the apocalypse, which I'll go into more with spoilers. But so yeah, if you're someone like me that's not really a Shyamalan fan, I do think this one would definitely be worth checking out. So, with that, we're gonna get into spoilers. So first off, uh, yeah, Andrew recognizes Ron Weasley's character, and you know he tells Eric, who's Jonathan Groff, who again doesn't really get to do anything throughout this film. And also, one thing that I think really would have helped this film is because it takes place over 2 days. Is if when they break away for the night and they all go to sleep, is if Andrew and Eric had kind of had a conversation with each other as they're tied to a chair about, you know, Jonathan Groff saying that, you know, what if it is true? You know, I'm starting to believe them. Things sound right coming from them. And Andrew trying to be the logical one, like, no, it's not. They're targeting us. They're full of it. If they had had a conversation like that, I think that would have really helped the story out. But so excuse me. After each one of them gets killed, Dave Bautista turns on the news, and again we do get footage, and this really reminded me of Shyamalan, like the of over the top horror scenes, like, you know, in this case it's a natural disaster, but he always kind of puts these over the top scenes like that in his films. like it's the news, but they're broadcasting like this whole video footage of the beach with this huge uh, tsunami wave, and then the viruses, and then of course all the planes crashing. He turns that on to say, like, see, because of your choice, the next plague has descended upon us. But Andrew's argument is he realizes that these are pre-recorded programs. These are not live news programs. It's all pre-recorded. It's airing again. So, which is why he says, there's a way it could be tweaked, or there's a way that this could have been photoshopped or edited or put together somehow by you guys. Because he also says how Dave Bautista is always checking his watch, so he always knows what time to have the sacrifice, what time to turn on the news. But it's all tied in because we do get this flashback to how Ron Weasley, he has to be going under an alias or a different name, because he remembers, we get the flashback of this night where the two of them were at a bar. This guy game bashes them, they get into a fight, and then because of that, Andrew starts going to the gym, getting into martial arts, training himself, but he also gets a pistol for self-protection. And even Eric doesn't seem to believe, like, is that really the guy? Like, is that really the one that attacked us or you? And the film doesn't show it up until the end. At the end we find out, yes, that was the one from the bar. But, and then also Andrew puts it together because Dave Bautista, Leonard, says that, he's a school teacher, but he's also a bartender. The one lady is like an RN, and then the younger woman is a waitress. I can't remember what he says about them, but basically his theory is, you get this a homophobic guy who got in trouble. He got arrested for this fight at a bar with a gay couple. So now he's at this other bar. He's telling his stories to a bartender. They conspire this plan together. They pull in these other two people who are somehow impressionable or desperate in their own way. So that's his theory, along with knowing when to turn on these pre-recorded, sort of scheduled programming. But the reason why Eric, Jonathan Groff, is sort of also leaning towards the apocalypse is because when Ron Weasley is killed, at first I noticed it when it happened, but I thought it was just the way it was shot. But there's like this beam of light coming through the window, and Eric says, I saw a figure in the light, and what if that was like a sign that they are right and one of us needs to kill ourselves off? And so they're all killed off. Eventually it's just Dave Bautista. And then this is another kind of silly Shyamalan moment where Dave Bautista says, well, all that's left is for me to kill myself. But if you say no and I have to kill myself, you kind of get this short window, like this couple minute buffer to recorrect yourselves and then stop the apocalypse. It kind of sounded like a plot hole that they were trying to address. It kind of sounded like a silly Shyamalan moment. But this is kind of when we get Jonathan Groff's acting, because Dave Bautista kills himself. They see the planes crashing. There's like lightning that strikes a tree. And Jonathan Groff is now fully convinced that these are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And I can't remember exactly what he says, but he says anger, I think compassion, whatever the four horsemen are of the apocalypse, that's what each one of them represents. And so he tells about the figure that he saw in the light, and he's at peace with everything, and kill me now while I have the vision of our daughter growing up, you spending time with her. I had this peaceful thought, peace of mind, kill me now. So he does. There, and I would have rather the film ended here. I think it would have had the same ambiguity as the book, and kind of a nice. The line is kind of cheesy, but what makes it even more cheesy is that the film continues. If it just ended here, that's when Andrew goes to the treehouse where he told the girl to go. And she says, "Did Daddy Eric save everyone?" That's when he says yes. But then they drive down the road. They stop off at this diner, a, a fully populated diner where no one's panicking. Everyone's normal and fine. And then this is when it gets really cheesy. And this is where I wish that they hadn't explained anything and just gone the route of the book, complete ambiguity, no answers. But again, I know how uh, modern audiences are. They need answers. When there's something that's ambiguous, they implode. And so they go in the diner, and on the news, there's like a compilation of stories. Like, oh, the tsunami subsided, the virus, they found a cure, the planes just miraculously stopped crashing, they all came back online, were able to land safely. And you could argue, like, is it all coincidence, or was it because of their sacrifice? I'm pretty confident it's obvious that because Jonathan Groff sacrificed himself, that somehow these were real plagues and these were the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And it was so, to me, it was so silly, lackluster, and kind of killed the impact and buildup of the film. That if it had just ended just driving away or just right there in the treehouse, perfect amount of ambiguity with enough detail in each direction, that would have been fine. And then there's the whole notion of how these four people came together, because they talk about how they had the same visions, of these events, the same visions or the same dreams. But the only answer they give as to how they came together was a message board online, which I thought was kind of silly. I would have rather they didn't explain that. Because I think we could all get behind the idea that this is just some either a crazy cult that met, however, don't explain it, or yeah, this is a group that's targeting them for the the fight and the arrest of Ron Weasley. But it does go a little too far, or a little longer. It explains that yes, it is the apocalypse, and that's where it kind of lost me. So yeah, there's a lot to this film I like. I love the setting. I love the look of the cabin. I love the look of the film, even though it kind of looks like a Hulu original film. The entire cast, I thought, did a good job. A little disappointed with Jonathan Groff, who was actually the main person I went there to see, because I love Mindhunter. But Dave Bautista and the young girl, I thought, were the two standouts. Then I'd say Ben Aldridge was also one. A lot of people say that Ron Weasley was a standout performance-wise. He's the first one to get killed. He really only gets like 2 scenes where he gets to act. And he's either just sort of a snarky asshole, or when he's putting the hood on and, he's desperate, he's crying. Decent. But I just think there was enough of him there to really say it was a standout performance. And I really like the idea of not knowing if they are these four horsemen of the apocalypse or if they are targeting these people for a specific reason. But with enough information, so at the end of the movie didn't explain it, that could make sense. So yeah, it really should have went the route of the book. It should not have strayed away from the book too much, or as much as it did. But it was still an enjoyable film. And yeah, it was kind of repetitive with the events, especially as how each progression is, do you sacrifice yourself? No. Your turn. This is my life. I'm trying to humanize myself. They're killed. Turn on the news. It's not true because yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. That's pretty much the formula after the first 20 minutes or so. And I would say that if we had just gotten 15, 20 minutes of this family at the cabin in the beginning, we probably could have been a bit more emotionally invested, which I think is what the flashbacks were supposed to do, but they didn't really work. And I mean, yeah, it did help explain that Andrew is sort of the hot-tempered one, quick to act with violence, whereas Eric is more vulnerable and, you know, probably more apt to believe the more religious stuff that's going on. But I still thought it was a decent film. I still think this is Shyamalan's best film since Unbreakable. Nowhere near as good as Unbreakable or Sixth Sense, but I did think it was better than all the ones since then. So yeah, I mean, it probably, I don't know if it would really be worth seeing in the theater, but when it goes to streaming or, uh, uh, home release like DVD and Blu-ray, if you're a good person, sorry, check that out. It'll be worth checking out at home. So yeah, still not a Shyamalan fan, but I was surprised by this movie. I went in between no expectations or low expectations and expecting kind of a movie to laugh at. And it wasn't that at all. So that is Knock at the Cabin. Has flaws, but I enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.